Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for watching another episode of Interviews with Entrepreneurs in South Africa. Today, I'm very excited to be introducing you to Jean Rodrigues. Jean, will you tell us a little bit more about your business and why you started it?
Melanie, thank you so much for having me. It's such a gift to be here. And so my business is really around service, specifically professional coaching, and it has a very integral approach. So I look at self-development coaching with teams and individuals, as well as Satchitananda yoga and hypnotherapy. So for me, it's always been able to shift an individual, not just on a mental level through conversation, but it's really important to help a person shift on an emotional and physical level as well, so that sustainable change can happen. And in essence, really make the unconscious conscious, but in a very slow, steady, and systematic way. And how my journey really began was that it really began when I was 16 years old, when I was just so stressed and completely overwhelmed at school. I had 3 ulcers by that time, and I really wasn't managing my life at all. And I had such a guardian angel come into my world, and this was my yoga master, and she really helped me to start learning how to actually manage my life effectively and how to build up my internal support system, so that when I was faced with stress or anxiety or parts of feeling withdrawn or not being able to communicate effectively, I started really learning strategies of how to do that. And it was amazing when that door opened, because that's when I met really became well versed in the coaching space as well, because I then had professional coaching and my own brain profile done that really told me about how my unique brain functions, and also just worked a lot in the hypnotherapy space as well. And having lived that personal experience, it just felt completely fitting to kind of follow that, to help people really learn to manage their lives.
So how long have you had your business?
I have started my my business, Light Up Within, in 2017.
Okay.
Yes. So I finished my 2-year postgrad in coaching and leadership, and then I was in Spain for a year, where I was working and doing a lot of my training, my 3-year yoga diploma through the Satchitananda Academy, Bihar Academy, and then I started my journey in Spain, and I've really just brought it back to a place that is very close to my heart, which is my home. So it's been moving, and specifically during this time, it's been just an incredible and interesting space to be in, because it's an extraordinary time where people are really having to show up for themselves and really figure out what they want. And it's really great to have a sounding board and to have an ally through this time.
Now, in my personal experience, most coaches are a little bit older than you are. Do people ever say to you, you're very young to be a coach?
I have had it a few times, and it used to actually be quite a challenging thing to work with, just in terms of me feeling, bringing all of my baggage into the space. But really during the training, I already knew that was such a place of that people are already going to bring up, and I really worked on how that may be a potential trigger for me and how to actually work with that. And actually just having those initial conversations with people, and just at the end of the day, people just want to feel appreciated and want to feel heard. And if I'm able to create a space where an individual can actually feel like they're really being supported, then regardless of age, it's more about how you can actually hold that. So it's been positive.
That's awesome. And I can see you actually turning it into a unique sales point even.
It is. I suppose it has become that. And it's interesting because I think there is, even when we used to have our coaching conversations, and even with my supervisor and aspects like that, it's like, the older coaches as well as the younger coaches both have something unique to offer to the space.
Mm.
And for me, I think starting my journey so early on in life has really given me such a wealth of experience. And having moved in different types of areas and having worked in the corporate space, but really finding my truth in terms of the entrepreneur space has really kind of allowed me to engage, but also connect with people on different levels.
Mm. Mm. And so a lot of people kind of spend the first half of their lives in a job or something before they have the courage to become self-employed. What do you think it is that made you ready to feel self-employed from such a very young age?
Oh my gosh, I must say, I really feel it has to do with my upbringing and my parents, because both of my parents are entrepreneurs, and it's really from a young age what I've known. And I've always said to myself, I want to have my own business. That is something that's been important to me. So it wasn't really a kind of a decision. I felt like it was just part of my dharma or my duty on this planet, that is what it was going to look like. And I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to come about, but it definitely came through service and my connection with people. So that's been really exciting.
Mm. That's quite awesome, because a lot of people face that barrier of fear before they cross that divide, and it's great to hear that you've gotten an early start on it. What do you?
And you know what? It's so sorry, Melanie, but it's so true, because it's a very overwhelming place as well, because you're coming from a kind of I've worked in the corporate space, I've worked in the teaching space, where you get a set income per month, everything's going to be okay, and you're going to get that check. And when it comes to your own space, you don't know what that looks like, and you don't know what the amount is going to be, and until you really start building that flow. But for me, what was really been interesting is that specifically during this time, things are changing, and things are no way going to be like they were, which in a way is good. We need to move forward in a different and think differently. So if this is more than anything a time to be creative, I would really say to the people that are thinking about moving in a different direction, start slow. You don't have to jump all of a sudden in a whole new thing and leave the other thing behind, but start building their voice in their own way.
That's great advice. So how do you overcome your own fear and distraction when you're not sure how you're going to make ends meet at the end of the month?
So I must say that I'm so grateful that I have a wonderful external support system that is there to kind of keep me going. But for me, it's always been my personal practice that I've been doing for such a long time, which is really about cultivating that trust and that faith in something higher than ourselves. That it's really that I am being guided, and I've just got to trust the process. And when I feel that I am kind of moving off center, it's like, all right, well, why am I doing this? What am I here to do? Everything's working out slow, steady, and systematic. And it is constantly working on yourself to keep yourself grounded, because the minute you start overthinking about what's out there, everything starts becoming quite a lot, and you're like, I should have just become a doctor, and then I know that I would have been sorted for the rest of my life. And I'm like, maybe my next lifetime that's what I'll be, but right now this is where I am at, and this feels right. And I think it's so important for people to become very clear with their direction. And I think more than ever this year, it's become very clear for me that I am on the right path, and I've been given such amazing opportunities that have almost just kind of highlighted that. So, and I think one of the biggest ways, and really feel that one of the biggest ways people become clear with what they are supposed to be doing and where they're going is around attachment. And people have to learn about detachment and by doing things, but how can we hold our desires, our expectations, but let go of the expectation and the attachment that comes with that.
That's a big one. Attachment and expectation have been big words for me along the way in my personal career. So that's great advice.
Absolutely. And you know what, it's, they're huge words, and not only are they huge words, but they're big emotions. So it's so important to be able to be guided with that. It's like, how do you hold something so lightly? You're holding this little hamster and you love this hamster so much, but how do you make sure you don't squeeze it to death because you love it so much? It's like really teaching the child how to hold it properly. It's going to be okay. The hamster knows you love it. You just got to be gentle. And that's really with life right now. If you're going to squeeze it so tightly and try so hard to be in control, things are going to find ways of kind of rebelling that.
That's such a wonderful analogy. So who's your ideal customer?
My ideal customer would definitely be someone that is looking to self-develop and wants to move forward with their lives, because I've worked with such a range of individuals, from children, but specifically teenagers and young adults and elderly people as well. But it's specifically around people that want to build their internal support systems. They're at a point of their life where they really need to develop, and they need the support systems, the strategies, and the direction of how to do that.
Mm-hmm. So you work a lot with teenagers?
I have done a lot of work with teenagers.
Okay.
Yes.
And what do you enjoy about working with them?
I think for me, it's a very personal space, because that is where my space really began. So it really means a lot to be able to provide these young adults with the opportunity to think differently, to know that there are different ways of managing their lives, that there are options out there. And it's an incredible yet very challenging time of identity. And who am I? And what is the place that I want to have in the world? And, it's so interesting, because the space of identity is really connected to the solar plexus. And often, when the solar plexus is one of our storehouse for communicating, our stomach is sore, something is not right. And that's really where it begins. And it has a lot to do with rejection, with identity. And from that space, it's how do we work on a physical level to really work with identity, but also working with adolescents on what's actually happening mentally for them.
Mm-hmm. I know that there was if I'd had some of those tools earlier on in my life, it would certainly have helped me a lot.
I promise you, like, it is so, that is why I'm really grateful that things are shifting in the education space, because we are never taught from a young age how to actually manage our lives, how to have honest conversations, how to manage stress, how to learn according to how we process information, how to set boundaries. That is just something that we're expected to kind of figure out. And then there we are, 50 years old, in a trying to be the CEO of a company, and you can't even figure out how to have a difficult conversation, or you get derailed because of something of managing your family life. But these are not skills that we are taught. But wouldn't it be wonderful if these were skills that we would be able to embody from a young age, that it becomes a way of being, that when we move into our careers, whatever that may look like, that we have a set foundation of how to communicate effectively. What are our boundaries? What is acceptable and what is not acceptable to us? And I think if that is such a gift, if we can actually move with that.
Absolutely. I know so many adults who are, and myself in particular, who have spent our adult lives trying to undo the damage of the past. And it makes so much sense to lay in the groundwork right from the start, so that you rather grow from that.
Yeah. And Melanie, that's such a valid point, because for me, it's really about moving away from the kind of a medical model approach, where it's like, okay, you have really messed up in your life, that is why you are depressed, let's put a label on it, this is how you fix it, let's give you a tablet, you're going to be okay. But specifically, because we live in such an incredible culture of storytelling, the narrative is such a big part of our journey. And specifically with the Afrocentric perspective, we have to be able to allow ourselves to tell our story. And our past plays such a big role in how we are right now and where we want to go. And I think by moving away from kind of diagnosing that there is a problem and moving into a space of this is what my story looks like and this is why I feel or think that I'm depressed. It creates such an open space to work with because you really understand for that person, okay, well, what is, you know, a failed life look like, or what does depression look like for you? Tell me more about that. It's not about, okay, yeah, depression, that's an issue. It's more like, what makes you feel or think that? Let's learn about your life. Let's learn about your story.
Mm, mm. Do you feel that those labels are very damaging?
I do feel that in some, it's difficult because I can understand from a medical perspective how labels serve a valid point to help create that form of diagnosis. But I think that in isolation can be very dangerous. I think there needs to be a very holistic approach when looking at an individual that is, okay, you are potentially anxious, have anxiety or depression or suicidal. It's really important to understand from an ecosystemic perspective what is actually happening in their world. How is all the other people in their world contributing to that space? What's happening on a collective level? Because it's not about taking the power away from an individual, but it's about helping that individual gain their own power back. And it's not going to be done by, here's a tablet, here's the label. It's going to be done by really listening and understanding that person's story.
That's a beautiful perspective. Now, you've mentioned that you use hypnotherapy in your work. Can you tell us more about that?
So how it works is that through the integral approach, I'll always have two different contracts because, you know, from an ethics perspective, it's really important to, you know, for an individual that comes for coaching or an individual that comes for hypnotherapy to understand the difference between the two. And if a person does come for hypnotherapy, it's an incredible space because it's really about working with making the unconscious conscious, but using the individual's words that they actually want to kind of retrain their subconscious mind. And how it works is we've got beta, alpha, theta, delta brainwaves. And what we actually do is I would take an individual into a very relaxed state. So it would be very much in the alpha, theta space where it's almost in a dream kind of space or a deep relaxation, because that is where the conscious mind is less active and I can work deeper with the subconscious mind. So that's where during that process I would work with what the individual really wants to work on, whether it's I've got massive problems about being enough and I just don't feel okay in my world, or whether it's around building confidence or whether it's around addiction. It's really about training yourself on a deeper level, because that's where, you know, the super ego, the voice behind us, the kind of the, how would you say in the Wizard of Oz, kind of the man behind the curtain, that's what's actually controlling us. So we want to get to that point when we say, okay, what does this look like to us? Let's learn to, that's those super learning processes to help us manage our lives and actually take control.
And these sessions, do you do them in person or are you able to do them online?
So with the hypnotherapy sessions, I do them in person. So I wouldn't do them online. I would do the introductory session online and really learn about the individual. But it's really important to be able for me to have that space of actually observing the individual on an entire space, what's happening with their body, observing what's happening with their eyes, and just being able to take in on a very broad level what's actually going on for that individual. And I feel that it's very important for me to be in that space one-on-one. Okay. The coaching that I've been doing, as well as with the yoga, I've been doing that online. And even though it's so wonderful to have that space of being in person, it's been working really well online as well. And specifically a lot with my clients, they are enjoying the space a lot. And I think it also just creates that other element of just feeling present and at ease and not feeling like they have to rush from the session to something else. And it's just, it seems as if there's a space of presence that is actually being built online, which is interesting.
Do you feel that people have more time in the day because they're not spending so much time in their cars?
personally for me, it's been a gift, and it's been great for me. However, I think it all comes down to how we manage our time, because I have some clients, and I've been speaking to a lot of people that feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even have any time anymore, because it's really about creating those boundaries again. It's like, how do I still be at home and do my work, but make sure I don't work a 12-hour day, more rather than I should be working an 8-hour day? Because it's like, how do we find that switch off button? And I think that is such a necessary point for us to move forward, because not only do we have to learn about managing our time, but we have to learn to switch off. And I think what a very interesting space to connect with is that during the initial kind of lockdown period, that space of quietness, introspection, stillness is something. How do we actually embody that moving forward? Even though we have to go back into that rat race, and do you have to now go into that chaos? So how do you allow yourself to be still, take that time, but still kind of move forward, but with a new way of being?
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there is a school of entrepreneurs out there who feel that it's all about the hustle and longer days are more value, and who really feel that if they're not working until 2 o'clock in the morning, they're not trying their best. What are your thoughts around that?
I am of the definite experiential process now, that in the past I would have said, yes, that makes sense, let's do it, let's go with it. But after just really coming to just allowing myself to be present has just made it look completely different, because I love what I do, and I love working hard at it, and I can work the whole evening. I really can. But it's so important for me to find that I need to pause. I need to find that stillness to actually regroup and gather my strength, not for anybody else, not for anything else, but for myself. And I think that that's one of the traps that we can fall into, is because we love it so much, or there's so much to it, we want to get going with it. We can work so hard and all the time. But I think it's so important to find that dualism of life and that balance, where it's, how do we still put all of our energy in a constructive way during that time, but then at the same time switch off and give back to yourself. And I think that plays a very big role in terms of self-care, in support, and how an individual really looks after themselves. And that is so vital, specifically for entrepreneurs, because we have to be able to learn how to find that balance.
I personally believe that self-care is one of the kind of aspects that a lot of entrepreneurs overlook. We sort of ready to throw ourselves under the bus for the bottom line.
It's so true. It's so true. And for you, knowing that, how has that worked for you?
Well, in my 20s, I would typically work an all-nighter every single Thursday night, because it's what I saw my dad do. But I've also, as I've gotten older, I've seen that my mom has lived a decade longer than he did. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's because he worked so many nights, And now I work very hard to get my 8 hours.
Yes. And isn't that amazing? Because it's so true. And I did I had a Facebook Live with David Arthur, and he's a really incredible integrative medical practitioner. And he speaks a lot about, we spend so much time on our waking hours, but our sleeping hours are just as important, if not more. And if we are not getting our personal time to actually switch off, then that's a really big problem, because at the end of the day, entrepreneurs are about really bringing to the front a model and a role model within themselves. And we have to look after ourselves. We have to be able to be productive. We have to be able to give everything we can. And the thing about self-care is, often people are like, oh my gosh, self-care, that's awful. Like, I really don't have time to breathe or whatever. And it looks so different for different people. It's not about there's a one size fit all, and that is not about that. It's like about, do you want to go for a hike or be in nature? Or maybe self-care just actually looks like you just go and have a really long shower. Or maybe you just switch off your laptop at a certain time every evening and just watch a TV show, and that for you is self-care. And I think it's just so much about just allowing yourself to disconnect and reconnect with your space.
Mm, mm, mm. I've now even gone so far as to give myself permission to, when I'm feeling it's all too much, to stop in the middle of a work day and do some sewing if I need to, just to ground myself. I get to a point where I know, but it's taken me a long time to understand when that feeling is there that I'm ready to do it, because I spent so many years squashing it.
And that's such a valid point, because it's like, we have to allow ourselves to have this experience, to really feel for ourselves what it's like. But it becomes a point to a lot of people where the kind of mantra is that it's not working as well as it could, and something is not okay, and it doesn't feel okay or as best as it could be. And the whole point in that is really learning to figure out what's actually happening with yourself, how to create that space where you can actually listen to yourself. And I think what is so interesting is that this whole time, in this extraordinary experience that we are in, it's showing that there are different ways of thinking and different ways of being. And who decided that working an 8 or 10-hour work day is completely normal and is great and shows that you are going to be successful? Who decided that? And actually, as human beings, we have a choice that, how do I actually want to live my life moving forward? Maybe I really wake up at 8 o'clock and start my day at 8, and at 1 o'clock I have an hour's break, but I go and literally go sit in the garden for 40 minutes. What determines success at the end of the day? And I think that is what is an important conversation.
For me, success is living the life I want.
And that's amazing. And are you feeling like you are on that journey?
Absolutely. But it's taken me 27 years of moving closer in increments, and also understanding what I want. That, what you want sometimes changes. And that's, for me, those are the trickiest times to navigate, is when what I want changes. Because then I have to change the plan.
Exactly. And I think that is what so many people on a collective level are really experiencing right now, in terms of, what do I really want and where am I going? And for me, the first step is to really look inwards and to really, for you to understand, for the individual, it's, who am I actually outside of everything, outside of other people's belief systems on me or other people's injunctions or ideals. Who am I as an individual? And being able to listen to the grace given by their own soul, rather than listening to everything else around them. And I think that's the first step, is really being able to listen to what's happening internally.
From your conversation, it sounds like you have high levels of self-awareness. Where do you think those stem from?
I really feel that, I think it's really been a lot of work, to be honest. I think just from having started, I think honestly we all have awareness within ourselves, but it's really untapping that and just really shining the light, on that. And I've just had a lot of, through supervision for my coaching and therapy and all the professions that I'm in, actually doing telephonic counseling and just studying psychology now as well. These are all professions that require a high level of awareness of self, so that you don't become completely absorbed with the other person on the side of the table. So it's so important to be able to understand your stuff before you can even work with anybody else, so that you know what triggers you, what doesn't trigger you. And it really, for me, that it started off with the science of yoga, and then it moved on in terms of coaching and learning about myself. How did I feel? Naming an emotion and being okay with that, being okay with vulnerability, being scared and acknowledging that. And really, because that is what at the end of the day is bravery, is feeling these really hard emotions and being okay with that, and really allowing yourself the space to sit in that and really wonder, what is this?
Thank you so much for this really insightful conversation today. It's been awesome talking to you. If anybody out there watching is eager to speak to you further and wants to get hold of you, where can they find you online?
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's amazing to be able to share and chat about everything. So they can find me on my website, which is www.lightupwithin.com. Alternatively, they can send me an email at Jean, Jean, at lightupwithin.com, and we can just kind of start having a conversation. And what's really exciting is that every second Thursday I'm doing my Facebook Live events, and tonight actually at 6:30 I've got a whole Facebook Live coming up, and it's really about what people have been saying to me. What they want to talk about is around purpose and finding purpose. Isn't that perfectly fitting to what we've been speaking about today?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if anybody watching is interested, please tune into Jean's Facebook Live event later today. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Melanie. It's been a gift. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too.